Welcome everybody. Today we're going to be learning the Maamar Balayla, Hahu, from the Rebbe, from the year of Tafshin Mem Dalid. This Maamar is the Rebbe's repeating and expounding on the original Maamar of the Frierdiker Rebbe, titled with the same Dibra Maschel, Balayla Hahu Nadadah Shnas HaMelech, from the year Tafshin. What is interesting about the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maamar is this was the first Maamar that the Frierdiker Rebbe said when he came to America to settle and to live over here, to become a citizen and settle in America. He arrived Tes Adar, and then the first Maamar was a Purim Maamar, Balayla Hahu Nadadah Shnas HaMelech. The Rebbe actually, in this Farbring, in Tafshin Mem Dalid, explains why is this the first Maamar of the Frierdiker Rebbe when coming to America. Because the lesson of this Maamar, as we're going to soon learn, is about having Mesiras Nefesh. And when Jews begin things, they need to begin with an approach of Mesiras Nefesh. Then they need to get into the nitty-gritty details and start working on the systems about how to move their Yiddishkeit further and to advance Yiddishkeit in America, etc., etc. But to begin, we need to begin with a approach. We need to enter a new mode in Avodas Hashem with complete given overness and with Mesiras Nefesh, and that way the rest of the continuation will feel the echo of that original Mesiras Nefesh. Daily we see this in the beginning of the day. We say Moida Ani, just a simple given overness to Hashem, and then we start utilizing our talents, our head, our brain, but it's all based on that original bittul, on that original given overness of Moida Ani. Thank you Hashem for waking me up today. I'm yours. I'm going to do your will. And the rest of the day follows that Maida Ani. So too, generationally, Judaism in America had to start with that original Maida Ani, that original sincere Mesiras Nefesh, and that's why the Frierdiker Rebbe started off his time in America with this Maamar Balayla Hahu, which highlights the mile of Mesiras Nefesh. Now, let's begin discussing the Maamar. In Sif Aleph, the Rebbe quotes the pasuk Balayla Hahu Nadadah Shnas HaMelech, which is from the beginning of chapter 6, Parag Vav of the Megillah. And as we know, the custom from the Maharil, that when we say Balayla Hahu, you see it's said in a louder, stronger voice, because this is, as the Maharil says, this is the Toikvei Shel Nes, the strength of, when did the Nes of Purim begin? At this point, when Achashverosh wasn't able to sleep, he woke up, and they started reading Chronicles for him. At this point was when the Nes of Purim began. Now the Frierdiker Rebbe asks on this. Seemingly, the Nes began. When would we say the tables turned in the story of Purim, that it went from the Jews being about to be killed to when they regained power and were able to, when they were saved and able to kill off their enemies as well? That happened when Esther asked Achashverosh, there's an enemy that wants to kill me, and it's Haman. At that point of the story, or maybe when Esther was originally planning on going into Achashverosh, when she told Mordechai, go gather all the Jews, fast for 3 days, I'm going to go in to the king, even though usually going into the king without asking permission could be a death sentence, could be suicide. Nevertheless, she decided to go in. Maybe that was the beginning of the Nes. But why are we saying the fact that Achashverosh one night couldn't sleep, and then he woke up, and they read him the Chronicles? What was so significant about this story to say that this is the Toikvei Shel Nes, the ultimate strength of the Nes of Purim, and when the table started turning? The Frierdiker Rebbe answers based on a medrash, which says that when it says Hamelech in the Megillah, it actually isn't just referring to the king Achashverosh, but it's referring to the ultimate king, the king Hashem. So when the Megillah says Balayla Hahu Nadadah Shnas HaMelech, what that means is that Hashem's slumber, Hashem was sleeping, Kaviyachol, and at this point in the Megillah is when Hashem woke up to start taking care of the Yidden and to save them. So that would obviously explain why this is the main part of the Nes. Hashem woke up, Hashem was sleeping, and therefore Gzeira happened against the Jews. And now Hashem woke up, and therefore the beginning of salvation happened. However, this seemingly is not a good enough explanation to explain why this is Ikr Toikvei Shel Nes. You're going to tell me this pasuk means that Hashem was sleeping, and now there was a Nes that he woke up? I thought we said that Hashem doesn't sleep. It says, Hine le'yonam v'le'yishan Hashem Yisrael. It says that Hashem doesn't sleep nor slumber. So what's the explanation? How does it say that Hashem was sleeping and then he had to wake up? I thought it says in Tehillim that Hashem does not sleep. And the explanation given is that it depends on us. When Yidden are sinning, when we're not doing what we're supposed to do, then Hashem, so to say, falls asleep. And there's a pasuk that says, Ura lama sishan Hashem. Awake Hashem, why do you sleep? the pasuk that says that Hashem doesn't fall asleep, that's talking about when Yidden are doing what they're supposed to do. So the way Hashem acts and deals with us, as we're going to soon see, is dependent on how we act. When we are doing proper Torah mitzvahs, then Hashem actually does not fall asleep. When we're not doing proper Torah mitzvahs, then there's a concept of sleep above, with which we need to wake Hashem up. How does this work? Why is it that Hashem's consciousness, so to say, Hashem's being awake or falling asleep, is dependent on us Jews? So the explanation is based on what the Mekubalim say the term Adam is. A human being is called Adam. Why Adam? So one of the explanations is Adam because we come from the Adama, we come from the ground. Another explanation of the Mekubalim is Adam is Al Shem Adam El Elyon, that we are in reflecting the image of above. We reflect the image of Hashem. So what that means that we're a reflection of Hashem. So however we act, Hashem responds accordingly. If we mirror Hashem, then that means also that Hashem mirrors us. As the pasuk also says in Mishlei, Kamayim hapanim lapanim, kein lev ha'adam ala adam, that just like when someone's face in the mirror reflects him, so too the heart of someone reflects the heart of his friend. If you feel positive and loving towards someone, they feel positive and loving back towards you. So too does this reflect the relationship of Hashem and the Jews. We are Adam el-Elyon, the Adam and Adam ha-Elyon, the Jew and Hashem reflect each other. So therefore, when we are in a matzav of sleeping, when Jews are not doing Torah mitzvahs properly, then Hashem, so to say, falls asleep. When we are awake and we're doing Torah mitzvahs properly, then Hashem is awake. So what happens is, in the story of the Megillah, we were not doing what we were supposed to do, so Hashem fell asleep. In other words, now naturally speaking, according to the rules of Elikus, according to the rules of the universe, and how Hashem and the Jews reflect each other, when the Jews fell asleep, it would make sense that Hashem should fall asleep. And that's why we say there's such a ness of Nadad Ashnas HaMelech, even though Hashem was meant to be sleeping at this point. We were in Golus. In Golus, Jews are not conscious. We're not so on and awake in our keeping of Torah mitzvahs. So too Hashem is not on and awake in his relationship with us. Yet a ness happened, a big miracle happened, that Nadad Ashnas HaMelech, Hashem woke up to start taking care of the Yidden again. This is the basic point of the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maamar, and that is Sif Aleph. That is the Teichen of Sif Aleph. Now let's share the Teichen of Sif Beis. What does it mean that Hashem is sleeping? Right? Hashem has no body. We know this is one of the 13 principles of faith. So what does it mean that when we are sleeping and we are in Golus mode in our Torah mitzvahs, that Hashem is sleeping? Why do we use this mashal as a way of saying, as a way of describing the exile? So for this, we need to understand what exactly is the concept of sleep to begin with. When someone sleeps, is their personality still there? Is their whole character there? Yes. Someone could have conversations in their dreams. The brain is still working. Someone could have emotionally frightening experiences, even pleasurable experiences in a dream and sleep. Someone could feel motivated. There's a whole world, our whole life, and our whole personality still exists when we're asleep. However, it doesn't exist in its normal order. Things don't have to make sense. It's not that I have a thought process, things are working on natural order, and then based on my experiences in my brain, all of a sudden my heart starts developing normal emotions based on the circumstances, in the same way when I'm awake and conscious. No. The dream world works at random. Yes, the brain is working technically, the emotions are working. Even the Ratzon and Tainug, pleasure, will, desire, those all exist while one is sleeping, but they exist in a chalent. They exist in a random order where it's hard to tell the hierarchy of what's considered the prime koiches of the person, the beginning of his personality, and then the next steps, the next koiches of his personality, how they develop from those. That seder of above and below, we do not see when one is sleeping. This actually is seen also in what one looks like when they physically sleep. They're lying down. Usually when someone's awake, they're erect, they're standing up. You see the head, which comes first, the brain, then the heart, and then the limbs of action, which extend from that body. But when one is sleeping, their head and their feet are equal. Yeah, everything is there, the brain is there, the emotions are there, the actions are there, someone can move around, but it's in a chalent, it's in a non-recognizable way of Maila Umata. I don't see what is considered prime, sensitive, which character traits have the soul and the person's truth most expressed, which have them less expressed. It's all there equally and random. So too, so when we say that Hashem falls asleep, Hashem is obviously there, Hashem is present. Everything about Elikus and how Hashem runs the world is still in existence, but it comes out in a way that it's non-recognizable. It's not seen in a cohesive fashion, just like by the person, the head is on top when he's awake, but when he's asleep, it's together with the feet. By Hashem and his relationship with the world, the Jews are the closest people to him. When the world is in Bismana Bayis, when the world is not in Galus, when the world is in a time of Geula, and when godliness is revealed, we notice the head of Hashem, so to say. We notice the Beis HaMikdash as the holiest place. We notice the Jews as Hashem's chosen people, and how he takes special care of us. But when Hashem is sleeping, Kaviyachol, we see everything equal. We don't see the Maila of the Jewish people. We don't see how Kedusha is elevated above the rest of the world, and it looks like things are happening. Everything is obviously still there behind the scenes, but it looks like things are happening at random. And in no order do I see the Maila of the head over the feet, the Maila of the brain and the heart over the rest of the limbs. Spiritually speaking, Hashem's running the world in a way that it seems that everything's just taken care of in a very big chalent, in a dog-eat-dog way, and I don't see the Maila of Kedusha. That's what it means when we say Hashem is sleeping during Golus. That is Sif Beis. Sif Gimel. This doesn't mean that sleep is just, how do we say this in simple words? When is one more present? When one is sleeping? When is one's soul more expressed and potent? When someone is sleeping or when someone's awake? We might think that someone is most, someone's neshama, nefesh, and character is most expressed when he's awake. Over there I see his whole character in a cohesive, normal Seder Hishtalshalos in a normal fashion. However, the truth is, says the Rebbe, this is only relative to his body. His soul's expression to the body and to people around him is most when he is awake. However, relative to the soul, it's actually the other way around. When the neshama is shining in the body, it's constrained towards emanating its kayach haseichel in the brain, its emotions in the heart, the rest of itself to the rest of the limbs in a very normal fashion. Now, normal has a plus, but normal also has a minus. The nefesh is bli gvul. This one soul is infinite. It's a piece of Hashem. And the kayachas, the way they exist in the soul, are way above the way we see them in the person's personality. When I see someone's personality, when I see someone's brain, the way their brain works, the way their heart works, I'm not really seeing the moichin and midos, the intellect and the emotion, the way they exist in the soul. I'm seeing the way the soul filters itself to shine some intellect into a human brain, a piece of meat. The way it shines its emotions into a small human heart. But obviously the way it exists in the nefesh is way higher and is in a way more sublime, spiritual, and true form. What I'm seeing, the intellect that we see in one's brain is obviously only an inkling about the kayach haseichel in the neshama. However, the only way to see it cohesively is when the person is awake, where over there it shines in the body. But when one goes to sleep, actually, the nefesh is taking all of those kayachas back. So in the person's body, I don't see the kayachas functioning in a normal fashion. It seems that he's functioning at random. So the body, actually, the nefesh is hiding from the body now, is hiding from the conscious state of humanity. But relative to the nefesh, sleep is actually when all those kaychas go back into the nefesh. Someone falls asleep and rests. That is when his energies all go back to their source to regain life. We know when one falls asleep, the nefesh goes back up to regain chayas. So sleep relative to the nefesh is actually a time of incredible presence, and when the koiches hanefesh are actually most closest to their source and existing at a much more sublime, and the koiches hanefesh, the person's personality, is existing at a much more sublime way than it is when it's filtering itself into the body. The body doesn't see it when one is awake. That's why it looks like a chesaron. That's why it looks like the person is less present when he's asleep. But relative to the nefesh is actually operating much more present and much more close to its etzem when one is asleep than when one is awake. So now let's apply this above as well. When Hashem is awake, so to say, what does it mean that Hashem is awake and that Hashem is asleep, as we explained before? When Hashem is awake, when Hashem is awake, we see a cohesive Seder Hishtalshalos. We have the 10 Spheres, which have a whole hierarchy of how the energy of Elikus comes to the world through first Chachma, Bina, and Das, which then have emotions, Chesed, Gvur, Tferes, Netzach, Chod, Yesod, Malchus, and then the lower they come and create the worlds of Bria, Yitzir, Asiya, the more I see this division. And then it comes to our world. We have very clear, our world is a world of concrete physicality. So over here, certain things are holy, and over there I should see holiness most. Certain things are less holy, and I should see holiness, and therefore life and energy and vitality in those existences less. However, that's all when Hashem is awake, so to say. In the time of Galus, Hashem, like we said, is in a state of sleep. Over there, we don't see the Maila of holiness over unholiness. So we might say that Hashem is less present. Comes this, but again, if we're saying that that sleep and being awake and being asleep, the way it is by a human reflects being asleep and awake the way it is by Hashem, so then, as the Rabbi says in Siv Daled, what must this mean by Hashem too? In Golus, is Hashem less present or more present than he is Bisman Abayis? We might think that Hashem is less present. We don't see the Maila of Kedusha. But that's only relative to what we see. Just like in the human, what we see when he is awake is only the filtered levels of him, is only the way his nefesh filters itself to relate to a guf. But relative to the nefesh itself, the nefesh is actually much more present, and the koiches are at a much more sublime and real level, at a truer place, before any filters. The way they just exist randomly in the nefesh, so too Hashem's relationship with the world. It doesn't become less when Hashem is asleep during Galus. Hashem's relationship to the Jewish people, Kedusha, and the energy that Hashem emits, the Elikus that Hashem emits to create the world, is not less during Galus. It's actually more present and more potent during the time of Galus than during the time of Geula, because it's going above filters. It's existing on Hashem's terms in a way that Hashem appreciates it and the way that it exists before dealing with our world, versus existing in a way that is filtered towards our world and we feel it. So Hashem has hashgacha pratis towards the Jewish people during Zman Abayis, when the Beis HaMikdash exists. We see how Hashem takes care of the Jewish people. And then Galus happens, and we don't see how Hashem takes care of the Jewish people. That doesn't mean he's not taking care of us. It means we can't recognize our Maila because we only see Hashem through filters. But is Hashem taking care of us during the time of Galus? Yes, and actually even more so. If Hashem ultimately is connected to the Jewish people, and Hashem is Kadosh and connected to Kedusha, then that doesn't go away in the time of Galus. It goes away from the body. It goes away from the world's experience. But in Hashem's experience, it's actually more potent. And Hashem is taking more care of us in the time of Galus than he is even in the time of the Beis HaMikdash. Kedusha is more present and more potent in the time of Galus than it is Bisman Abayis. So now when we say that Hashem wakes up, now we say Nadadash Nas HaMelech, that in Parak Vav of the Megillah, that Hashem woke up from his sleep. That means that the walls come down, and the way the koiches are, just like when one wakes up, they feel fresh, because the nefesh comes back to the body with a vengeance, with new fresh koiches, re-emanating from their original source. So too the koiches of Hashem, when he comes to, so to say, wake up, that means the koiches, the hashgacha pratis, the maila of the Jewish people over the rest of the world, the maila of Kedusha over any other neutral existence, comes out with a vengeance, as the Rebbe says over here, that we see over here the hashgacha pratis and the maila of the Jews mitashturim with an earthquake, and that's the and this is also why Galus is compared to it. So this is the dichotomy of Galus. The dichotomy of Galus is we see our maila, we see the maila of the Jewish people less. On the one hand, it seems like we are lower and dependent on the rest of the nations. But on the flip side, we're actually more protected from Hashem. On Hashem's terms, he's watching us much closer and much more lovingly, and in a much more transcendent way than he is Bisman Abayis. This is also why Galus, as the Rebbe completes Sif Dalet, is compared to a pregnancy, because the fetus, the way it exists in a pregnancy, you see these same two dualities. On the one hand, the fetus in the womb. The Gemara says that it's that the best times of a child's life is when it's in its mother's womb, eating what the mother's eating. Spiritually too, the child is learning the whole Torah. In fact, one of the reasons why we do a Shalom Zachar, we say, is like almost a to comfort the Avelos, the mourning of the baby having been born, because now he forgot his whole Torah. things were good in the womb. That's one aspect of pregnancy. On the other hand, we don't see a cohesive human being yet. We don't see the nefesh the way it exists cohesively. His head, as the Gemara says, his head is between his knees. He's not even eating through his mouth. He's eating through his stomach, through the umbilical cord. So on the one hand, I don't see a cohesive human being. On the other hand, that's not because things over there are just going on at random at the stage of development of the baby. It is actually because things are going on in a very spiritual, transcendental way, in a way that it can't be experienced cohesively in a human being. Then this is like sleep and like galus, where on the one hand, we don't see a cohesive flow of energy from what should be the highest and then trickling down to the lowest. It seems like everything's happening at random, but that again is not because it's not true. It's not because there isn't Maila and Mata anymore. It's not because the Nefesh or Hashem's Hashgacha Pratis went away. It's very, very much still here. But it's here in such a spiritual, transcendental way. It's here on Hashem's terms, not on our terms. When it's on our terms, we could appreciate it, but then it's filtered towards what we could experience. When it's on Hashem's terms, then it's much more true, much more infinite, much more spiritual. But then we just don't experience it as much. And this is the Nes of Nada Dashnas HaMelech, that Hashem woke up, and therefore we get our Maila and our Hashgacha Pratis, the way Hashem loves us and cares about us, on His terms, like when He's sleeping, but now He awoke. So now we get to see that with a vengeance, consciously in this world. And that's the Nes of Perek Vav of the Megillah. And we'll continue the last sifim of this Maamar another time. Emir Hashem.